You arrive in Johannesburg polished and rehearsed, carrying a smile like a badge, while your briefcase feels heavier than it should, like damp sand. The hall smells of coffee and varnish, and every handshake is warm for half a second, then turns slippery, as if everyone is wearing invisible gloves. Cameras blink like patient insects, and you hold your posture, pretending the flashes celebrate you, not the fragile story you're paid to protect. In the corridor, you hear stability, spoken softly like a prayer, and you realize prayers are what people use when locks no longer work. Your aides whisper schedules, but the words fall through you because you sense the meeting is already happening somewhere else without you invited. You take your seat beneath flags that look like curtains, and you feel the stage tilt, as if the floor has begun to remember old debts. A friendly voice praises partnership, yet you hear the hidden clause inside it, like a hook under velvet, waiting for your sleeve. You nod at speeches that float like balloons, but you watch the strings instead, noticing who holds them and who pretends their hands are empty. Your phone vibrates with numbers that feel like cold rain, and you mute it, as if silence can keep the ceiling from leaking. Across the table, a rival smiles too slowly, the way someone smiles when they've already counted what you owe and decided you can't pay. You remember when promises were bridges, but now each promise creaks, and you taste rust, like metal shavings hidden in your water. A draft statement arrives, and the ink looks darker than usual, as if it was mixed with something alive, something that wants to spread. You sign your name with steady hands, yet the pen drags like a blade, and you feel your pulse press into the paper. Applause rises, disciplined and thin, and you realize it's not approval at all, just a metronome keeping time for your surrender. In a side room, a quiet envoy offers support, and you hear the word the way you hear a chain placed gently on a table. You agree to terms that sound harmless, like weather, but you feel them settle on your shoulders grain by grain until you breathe shorter. Later, you walk past the glass walls and see your reflection split by lights, and you can't tell which version of you still owns itself. The summit's laughter echoes behind you, but it feels distant, like music playing in a house that has already been sold. You look at the city below, and the streets seem to flow in one direction, as if the world has become a river pulling your footing away. When you finally exhale, you understand the turning point wasn't a speech or a vote, but the moment you accepted dependency as kindness. Morning returns too quickly, and you wake with numbers behind your eyes, like insects tapping against glass, reminding you the night offered no escape. Breakfast is laid out perfectly, yet every bite feels borrowed, as if the food belongs to someone patient who will ask for repayment later. You read briefing notes that promise calm, but the margins feel crowded, whispering doubts that refuse to stay between the lines. In the elevator, mirrors multiply you, and each reflection looks slightly poorer, as if value is draining with every descending floor. The day's agenda smiles politely, but you sense the order is backwards, with conclusions already written and discussion serving only as decoration. A colleague jokes about optimism, and you laugh on cue, hearing the sound echo hollow like applause inside an empty vault. When negotiations resume, the room feels warmer, yet your palms are cold, gripping the chair as if it might slide away. Words like assurance and confidence drift through the air, heavy and sweet, making you drowsy, the way sedatives calm before surgery. You notice who speaks last, and how silence bends toward them like iron filings finding a hidden magnet. A document changes hands, thicker than yesterday's, and you feel its weight before touching it, the way storms announce themselves in pressure. You hesitate, and someone fills the pause for you, smiling kindly, rescuing you from choice while quietly taking it away. Your signature appears again, familiar and obedient, and you wonder when it stopped feeling like your own name. Outside, sunlight glints off glass towers, but inside, you feel underwater, watching brightness distort above the surface. During a break, you check messages from home, and the words feel far away, like postcards sent to the wrong address. An ally reassures you this is temporary, and you believe them because believing feels easier than standing alone. Lunch conversations circle safely around weather and culture, while beneath the table, your foot taps out a private alarm. You realize no one mentions exit routes, only maintenance, as if the structure itself has decided you will stay. The afternoon drags, thick and slow, and you sense time stretching, buying others' patience while selling yours cheaply. As votes align, you feel a soft click inside, like a door closing without a sound. By dusk, you understand control wasn't seized, it was gently handed away, wrapped in courtesy and passed across polished wood. The third day begins with thinner air, and you sense patience shifting rooms overnight, traded quietly while you slept without a receipt. You sip bitter coffee, noticing how bitterness sharpens focus, then dulls it, teaching you how dependence tastes before it shows. Briefings arrive lighter, shorter, trimmed of options, as if excess words were liabilities someone already wrote off. In the hallway, doors close softly behind you, polite and precise, sealing conversations you were never meant to finish. You hear laughter ahead, confident and loose, the sound of people spending time they don't fear losing. A chair scrapes during talks, and the noise startles you, reminding you how small disruptions echo louder when control thins. You watch faces nod together, synchronized like swimmers, sharing one breath, leaving you counting alone. Someone thanks you for flexibility, and you recognize the compliment as a measurement, not of strength, but of yield. Papers shuffle like dry leaves, and you imagine autumn arriving early, settling debts the summer promised to hide. A quiet clause is mentioned once, softly, then never repeated, trusting your fatigue to do the forgetting. You ask a careful question, and the answer arrives curved, sliding past truth without touching it. The room smells faintly of citrus and ink, clean enough to reassure, sharp enough to sting when you inhale deeply. Outside, traffic hums steadily, indifferent, teaching you how systems survive by ignoring individual hesitation. You feel watched without eyes, guided by expectations that weigh more than commands ever did. During pauses, you rehearse refusals silently, each one collapsing before it reaches your lips. An old ally avoids your gaze, kindness replaced by efficiency, the kind that finishes tasks without asking why. You notice clocks everywhere, none agreeing, and realize time itself has been renegotiated without you present. When consensus forms, it feels inevitable, like weather blamed on clouds you're not allowed to name. Your name appears in summaries beside words you didn't choose, yet must now defend as if they were vows. By evening, you accept the role you're playing, not leader or rebel, but conduit, valued only for what passes through. The fourth morning feels rehearsed, as if the day has already practiced you, knowing exactly where you will hesitate and where you will comply. You dress carefully, smoothing fabric that no longer protects, realizing appearances are armor only until the first quiet cut. Breakfast conversation turns strategic, yet no one asks your view. The way weather forecasts ignore a single window. Walking into the hall, you feel lighter, not from freedom, but from pieces already removed without asking. A new proposal waits at your seat, neatly aligned, carrying the calm confidence of something that expects agreement. You skim its pages, and each paragraph narrows like a corridor, guiding you forward while denying space to turn. Someone praises your reliability, and you hear it as confirmation that resistance has become unlikely. Across the table, patience is displayed like wealth, effortless and abundant, while yours ticks audibly inside your chest. The discussion stays polite, controlled, as if raised voices might reveal how little room actually remains. You notice how decisions arrive pre-packaged, requiring only your seal, like letters already written in your hand. A pause opens, brief and fragile, and you consider breaking it, but the silence feels guarded, owned by others. When you speak, your words sound distant to you, echoes of earlier convictions replayed at lower volume. A senior figure nods approvingly, and the nod carries finality, the way judges end arguments without speaking. You feel gratitude offered toward you, warm and public, making refusal now seem rude rather than necessary. Behind the smiles, you sense accounts balancing, relief spreading where your leverage used to sit. The room exhales together, synchronized, while you inhale alone. Realizing agreement has already happened. Notes are taken quickly, freezing the moment before doubt can return and disturb the shape of consensus. You watch your authority shrink into annotations, footnotes explaining decisions you did not direct. Outside, clouds thicken gently, not threatening, just enough to dim the light without anyone complaining. By nightfall, you accept that your role is preservation, not choice, keeping the system calm as it moves past you. The fifth morning opens quietly, and you realize quiet has become the signal. The absence of friction, meaning decisions are no longer looking for you. You review updates that read like confirmations, not questions. Each sentence closing a door you didn't know was still ajar. Coffee tastes thinner now, as if strength has been diluted to make it easier to swallow without reaction. In passing conversations, people thank you for cooperation, using the past tense to describe choices still unfolding. You sit through a briefing where outcomes are described as landscapes, fixed and natural, leaving no room for footsteps to change them. Your notes grow shorter, less argumentative, the handwriting itself adapting to reduced ambition. A familiar objection rises in you, then settles, trained by repetition to remain seated. When you glance at allies, their expressions hold relief. The calm of burdens shifted successfully. The agenda accelerates, skipping debates like scenes cut from a film that tested poorly. You sense momentum replacing consent, speed standing in for agreement. A document arrives, pre-summarized, and you realize summaries are tools for preventing memory from interfering. You approve language you would have revised before, because revision now feels like delay, and delay feels impolite. During a pause, you imagine stepping away, and the thought fades quickly, unsupported by any visible path. The room hums with efficiency, machines running smoothly once frictional parts are removed. You are consulted last, ceremonially, after alignment has already settled into place. Your response is anticipated, folded neatly into expectations prepared ahead of time. Applause breaks out briefly, like punctuation, marking the end of a paragraph you didn't write. You feel smaller, not from defeat, but from usefulness narrowed to a single function. Outside, evening lights switch on automatically, reminding you how systems prefer predictability over voice. As the day closes, you understand dependency thrives when resistance is reframed as inefficiency. The sixth day arrives without ceremony, and you notice how endings often hide inside routines, dressed as another ordinary morning. Your schedule shortens, gaps appearing where conversations used to live, replaced by confirmations sent without reply button. You move through security faster now, recognized less as a voice than as a form already approved. In meetings, you are thanked before you speak, gratitude positioned like a lid gently closing over discussion. The table feels wider, distance growing as others lean inward towards shared certainty you no longer shape. A familiar disagreement surfaces briefly, then dissolves under smiles that promise efficiency over friction. You realize persuasion has inverted, no longer about convincing others, but about convincing yourself to remain aligned. Documents circulate smoothly, their edges softened, dangerous corners filed down before reaching your hand. Someone jokes about progress, and laughter spreads easily. The way relief does after risk is transferred. You sense urgency evaporating, replaced by a steady glide that needs no correction from you. During breaks, you stand alone, watching groups cluster naturally, gravity pulling influence away from your orbit. Your phone stays quiet, not from peace, but because nothing remains undecided enough to interrupt you. A junior delegate seeks your signature with reverence, mistaking proximity to process for authority itself. You sign automatically, the motion practiced, muscle memory completing what conviction no longer fuels. The room grows lighter, almost cheerful, as if a storm passed elsewhere and spared this building entirely. You understand now that calm can be engineered, assembled carefully once dissent is fully accounted for. When a final summary is read aloud, your contribution sounds smaller than you remember making it. Applause returns, warmer this time, rewarding closure rather than courage. You feel relief, too, and the feeling unsettles you more than fear ever did. Walking out, you accept the quiet truth that losing control can feel indistinguishable from being relieved of duty. The seventh day feels borrowed, like time granted after the decision has already been sealed and distributed elsewhere. You scan headlines praising harmony, and the praise reads rehearsed, as if relief itself hired a publicist overnight. Messages arrive thanking you for leadership, carefully avoiding any mention of direction or resistance. In briefings, phrases repeat verbatim, polished smooth by travel, carrying no fingerprints from the room you're in. You notice how often your name is paired with continuity, a word that keeps motion without asking where it goes. Conversations shorten around you, efficient and respectful, like instructions delivered to a machine already calibrated. You attempt a small correction, and it lands softly, absorbed without ripple, like a stone dropped into thick cloth. A colleague assures you history will be kind, and you wonder when kindness became a substitute for truth. The agenda lists implementation, not debate, turning the future into a checklist rather than a question. You feel pressure not to disturb the calm, sensing how easily calm fractures if touched by doubt. During a walk, you hear footsteps a line behind you, not following, but matching pace to ensure you don't wander. You recall past crises when tension sharpened resolve, and compare them to this softness that dulls it completely. A quiet briefing explains safeguards, and you notice safeguards always guard the system, never the person inside it. Your approval is requested ceremonially, a stamp pressed gently to confirm what already moves on its own. Applause sounds again, familiar now, the sound of closure echoing before the door is even visible. You feel lighter leaving rooms, weight shared in the same places authority once rested. Outside voices speak of stability like a destination reached, not a balance still requiring effort. You sense how dependency prefers gratitude, training those inside it to thank the cage for its shade. By afternoon, your presence becomes symbolic, proof of consent rather than a source of it. As evening settles, you understand the collapse wasn't loud or sudden, but gentle enough to be applauded. The eighth morning carries a farewell tone without words, as if the building itself has begun preparing for your absence. You pack documents that feel lighter than when you arrived, emptied of urgency, reduced to records rather than tools. In final briefings, people speak around outcomes, careful not to reopen doors that now belong to procedure. You notice how often already agreed replaces explanation, a phrase that dissolves responsibility into the room. Hallways once tense now feel relaxed, the calm of systems no longer negotiating with uncertainty. A farewell handshake lasts just long enough to confirm closure. Warmth measured, controlled, complete. You thank people sincerely, surprised by how gratitude flows more easily than objection ever did. Outside, observers praise cooperation, mistaking smooth endings for strong beginnings. You reflect on how pressure vanished once leverage was gone, replaced by politeness and space. The summit's final statement reads clean and balanced, like a surface that hides depth entirely. Your role is summarized kindly, framed as stewardship rather than surrender. In photos, you stand centered yet unanchored, a figure marking time rather than shaping it. You realize the hardest loss wasn't influence, but the moment you stopped being necessary. A closing reception hums gently, conversations floating without weight or consequence. You smile naturally now, the expression no longer rehearsed, because nothing is being asked. When you step aside, the flow continues seamlessly, proving you are never the load-bearing wall. The city lights outside feel patient, indifferent to agreements signed far above them. You understand how dependency prefers clean exits, allowing collapse to feel like completion. As night deepens, the summit becomes memory, polished and safe, stripped of friction. You leave knowing the turning point passed quietly, not with resistance, but with relief. The ninth day begins after departure, when distance sharpens memory and you replay moments that felt harmless while quietly changing everything. Reports circulate praising outcomes, and you read them slowly, recognizing your own voice softened beyond recognition. Analysts speak of balance, their tone calm, as if calm itself were proof that nothing vital was lost. You notice how often responsibility is described as shared, a word wide enough to let accountability disappear. Old allies call to congratulate you, relief audible in their voices, relief you once mistook for trust. You answer graciously, measuring each response, careful not to disturb the finished story now traveling ahead of you. In private, doubts surface late. Like bruises blooming after impact, tender only once the room is empty. You revisit signatures and summaries, seeing how each concession wore the costume of practicality. Commentators praise maturity, equating restraint with wisdom, as if courage were a youthful habit to be outgrown. You sense how language protected everyone involved, wrapping consequence in phrases too smooth to cut. The summit becomes a case study overnight, stripped of tension, cleaned for instruction rather than warning. You are cited as evidence that compromise works, your silence interpreted as endorsement rather than fatigue. The thought of interruption crosses your mind, then fades, unsupported by any remaining platform. You realize how power leaves footprints only when it exits suddenly, not when it is gently escorted out. At home, familiar rooms feel smaller, as if walls adjusted while you were away learning to yield. You sleep lightly, dreams looping corridors and handshakes, endings replayed as beginnings. Morning headlines move on quickly, confirming how stability prefers amnesia over reflection. You understand now that collapse can be educational, packaged neatly for others to study without risk. The turning point settles into history, dated and indexed, no longer capable of protest. You accept the final weight of it all. Control wasn't stolen from you, it was thanked out of your hands. The final day exists only in reflection, when the noise fades and what remains feels heavier than anything you carried into Johannesburg. You replay the summit not as events, but as sensations, noticing how comfort steadily replaced vigilance without ever asking permission. What once felt like pressure now reads as guidance, a hand on your back steering gently while calling itself support. You understand how debt does not shout, but hums, low and constant, training obedience through rhythm rather than force. Dependency revealed itself as relief, arriving whenever resistance threatened to exhaust you. You see now that every concession was framed as care, each surrender padded to feel responsible and mature. The system never demanded loyalty, only calm, and calm proved easier than control. You recognize the true turning point was emotional, not political, when fatigue made agreement feel merciful. Power shifted hands without fingerprints, because nothing was taken, everything was accepted. The summit succeeded precisely because nothing appeared to break, while influence quietly drained away. History will record balance and cooperation, polishing edges until no one remembers what was sharpened down. Your role will be praised as stabilizing, a word that means motion was preserved at the cost of direction. In private moments, you finally name the loss without ceremony. Understanding clarity arrives after applause ends. You see how collapse can wear the mask of diplomacy, smiling patiently while doors close one by one. The world moved forward smoother afterward, mistaking silence for consent and order for health. You learn that systems fail quietly when people inside them grow tired of holding tension. What fell at Johannesburg was not peace or order, but the habit of saying no. And once refusal disappears, dependency no longer needs chains or threats to survive. You carry this knowledge forward, aware that the next collapse will feel just as reasonable. That is why the summit became a turning point, not because it was loud, but because it felt kind.